Gridiron Grinder! Hut hut hike!
All right, party people, it's Gridiron Grinder time. I'm Ryan. With me, as always, is my buddy James. Just a couple of dudes hanging out, talking about what's going on in the NFL each week. This is episode 152 of Gridiron Grinder, and for tonight, we're gonna start things off with Name That Stadium, like we always do. Then we're gonna hit the news from this past week. After that, we're going to do an AFC and NFC East Outlook, talking about all of those teams and what we think is going to happen with them this season. And last but not least, we'll close things off with our question of the week. And so, yeah, with all that being said, how's it going tonight, James?
It's going good. How's it going with you?
Pretty good, man. Pumped up. We got actual football tonight with the Hall of Fame game going on as we speak. And geez, man, we had two new subscribers last week in Gridiron Grinder. So we got Jay and Stephen B. Thank you guys for signing up. We hope you like the show. And also a thank you to Uncle Tim for sending them our way. So we will take those numbers. We will take them with pride.
Yeah, starting to push 30. We're getting there.
Heck yeah, man. Yeah, I still love it. When people ask, they're like, oh, how many subscribers you got? I'm like, oh, 25. They're like, oh, 25,000. Man, that's good. No, no, 25.
Yeah, exactly.
But hey, it's all good. We're having fun doing it, and we get it. These are kind of lengthy episodes. It's not for everyone. We don't have a lot of cool graphics and videos and things like that. But I would just say on that note, for anybody who's watching, especially new people, we do bookmark everything in the description of the video. And that way, if you want to jump around to a section, go for it. It's kind of easier that way if you don't want to sit through the news of the week or play Name That Stadium or any of that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, why don't we hand you the ball here, James, and why don't you do a little Name That Stadium for us?
Well, you should always play Name That Stadium. I'm going to correct Ryan. You can skip some of the news of the week maybe, but always play Name That Stadium. And this is where, as you can see, I'm traveling around to different stadiums that host NFL games. Generally, it's tied into something. I don't think we had. I didn't see any. I wasn't able to check today, but I didn't see any. I don't
No
remember when
takers.
last. So you put a guess out there. We'll give you a little shout out if you put a guess and you're wrong. Your first person to guess it right, we'll give you that extra special shout out. Bookmark it. You can play it for all your friends. It was actually 2 weeks ago. I was in Washington, and it was just on the heels of like all the shit that came down with the final sale of the Commanders, and then Daniel Snyder being fined like $60 million or
Yep.
something from the NFL, and just that I think that hit like right before the day we were doing like day before, right there, the day of when we recorded last or 2 weeks ago. So that's just I kind of settled on Washington with that.
Oh, definitely. And I like what you got going on there tonight. Very applicable. And so, yeah, let's see if we get any takers, man.
Yeah, and don't forget football's back.
It's preseason, but it's still
It's
football,
preseason,
you
but
know?
football is back.
Yeah, this is where it all starts. So, all right, well, let's move it on and let's do our recap of the past week, which is actually a recap of the past 2 weeks because, James, you went and did a little Catalina wine mixer on us. And so, you
Yeah,
know,
I needed a vacation. It's been a long time since I actually took a vacation, went somewhere. So
yeah, it's all good, man. I'm glad you got out of town and had some fun. And so, but yeah, I mean, hey, it was a fairly quiet off season most weeks. This past 2 weeks, it was like all hell broke loose, and we've got like a million things to cover in the news. And so, I'm going to kind of skim through it fairly quickly, probably skip over some of the details, but I want to get to as much as I can, maybe just staying a little bit shallow whereas in the past, I might go a little bit deeper on this stuff. And so, starting it off here, as you mentioned and I mentioned, we got football back tonight with the Hall of Fame game. The Jets and the Browns are playing as we speak. That's awesome. After that, and I'm just going to like put a pin in this. There was an issue with Sean Payton making some comments about Nathaniel Hackett and his poor coaching job in Denver last season. I want to come back to that when we do our question of the week and sort of like break that down and get your opinion on it, James. Next up, I got one that was just earlier today. Jamarco James, offensive lineman for the Tennessee Titans, was released by the team after being involved in multiple fights in training camp. This one, it's like, hey, you can't do the fighting thing. Coaches don't like it. They want to see, sort of like that passion and aggression, but they want you to control it. But it's interesting because Jamarco Jones was actually in line to be the starter at right tackle for them, and they do need help on that offensive line. And so this is actually kind of a big move, even though he's not a household name. So next up, we got Javonte Williams, the running back for Denver. He's coming off of that knee injury from last season. He is expected to play in the preseason, and so they don't play this weekend, but he'll be out there, it looks like, next week. That's huge news for Denver. Also huge news for fantasy football owners alike. That guy's been busting at the seams with potential, and we want to see what he can do. So after that, sort of a little feel-good piece here, but John Mechie, the wide receiver for the Houston Texans, he has recovered from cancer, says he feels like he's 110%. Really good for him, really happy for him, and hope all the success in the world for him with Houston. So going the other way with some of the injury stuff, Jalen Ramsey, the new cornerback for the Miami Dolphins, looks like he's going to be out until December with a knee injury, already had surgery. They brought in Eli Apple to add some depth until he returns. And so, that was like one of the blockbuster moves here of this past offseason. A big deal for them, but nice that they brought in Eli Apple at least to help kind of ease some of that blow. Next up, James, we've got Joe Burrow. Had a calf strain in practice a few days ago, whatever it was. He's expected to miss several weeks. And so looks like he should be fine for week 1, but his status for preseason, he's probably not going to play. I don't know how much he was going to play anyhow, but, still something people want to know. It's Joe Burrow. So after that, this one, not a player, or at least not a current player, but Frank Gore, longtime 49ers running back, and I know he bounced around with some teams there for a little while. He is going back to the 49ers in the front office now. He's going to be a football personnel director. And so, the title maybe a little bit, who knows what all that means, but it's personnel related. In any event, it's good to see him back with the 49ers. The dude had an amazing career there, and I'm sure he's got some value to add for that team. Next up, James, Jimmy Graham. He has re-signed with the Saints after all these years. I know he was bouncing around. He was with, Chicago for a little while and wherever the heck else he went. Who knows how much he's got left in that tank, but he was happy to go back to New Orleans. Sounded like he was getting ready to retire, and then they came calling, and so he's going to, go back for it one more time. Probably more significant news, Marcus Peters, the former cornerback for the Baltimore Ravens, he has signed a 1-year deal with the Raiders. They definitely need help in the secondary, and I think he's still got some gas left in the tank. He is kind of getting up there in years, but he's been a pretty darn good cornerback. So after that, a couple signings with the Giants. Cole Beasley going to add some depth at wide receiver. James Robinson going to add some depth at running back. Other running back news, Melvin Gordon. He has signed with the Baltimore Ravens, and that is in part because of J.K. Dobbins being on the PUP list and also having, it sounds like, some contract disputes or some baggage or whatever going on there. And so they just needed to get somebody else in the mix anyhow. Melvin Gordon, talked about not wanting to retire and give up on his dream just yet. The last time we saw him, he wasn't really lighting it up on the field, but who knows, once you kind of have that decline and you're at the end of your career like that, it can be extra motivation to get in the best shape you can to kind of have a last hurrah. And so we'll see how that plays out.
Melvin Gordon, he was in Denver, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. He
Yeah, I think it was.
basically was doing the 1-2 punch with Javante Williams, and then
Yeah, I think that was
yeah.
more like a coaching issue versus him being in decline. I think the last two Denver coaches kind of sucked. So
Well, for sure, and I do want to say, oh yeah, and I guess the coaching could be part of it, but yeah, I believe his yards per carry dropped pretty significantly, but that could be a factor there. So.
yeah. And in injury news, you missed Quisenberry.
Oh, you know what? I was going to say I am so far from finishing my list, but I don't have him on my list. And so, yeah,
Yeah,
why don't you give me that one, James?
Scott Quisenberry, center for Houston. It was either yesterday or today. He tore his ACL and MCL in
Oh man,
practice,
I didn't
and
see that.
he's out for the year.
Okay.
So I mean that's kind of rough for CJ Stroud, who's coming in a rookie quarterback. You need that good offensive line in front of you, and with Quisenberry, that basically the their center is out. You're gonna have
Yep.
to fill that position somehow. I don't know if Juice Scruggs is gonna do it for him.
That's a good question. Luckily they got some pretty good bookends in Houston right now, but yeah, you
Hmm.
want to get somebody up front in the middle to help that quarterback. And yeah, well, I mean, they did have a lot of good things to say about Scruggs when they drafted him, so maybe he can step up real fast.
Hopefully he can.
Yeah, and I would say historically, centers are one of the positions that seem to get up to the speed of the NFL level fairly fast, and so that might be okay for them. We'll see. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers
Um,
crossed there.
yeah, and so other injury stuff, James. We got Cooper Cup left practice the other day with a hamstring injury. I haven't seen an update since the other day, but I know people are going to be watching that like a hawk. If they want to rebound from last year's atrocity, they need that guy to be healthy.
Yeah, I think I
Um,
read. I'll look it up, but I thought I had read that it's not that
Not expected to be a
serious.
major thing.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I'll look it up real quick while you.
Keep going. Keep burning through our mile
Yeah.
of news here. Okay. Yeah. In other wide receiver news, Kadarius Toney, the Kansas City Chief wide receiver, he had a knee procedure recently. Looks like his status for week one is in question. So that one's not good. And then Naheem Hines, the receiving running back for Buffalo, if you will. He had a knee injury. He's expected to be out for the season. Bummer for him. I've always liked Naeem Hines. And then Denver, they've had a couple wide receivers go down. Tim Patrick, it looks like tore his Achilles. He's going to be out for the year. And KJ Hamler, they discovered a mild heart irritation. The team has waived him, and they've reached some kind of a settlement with his contract. Um, you know, Hopefully Hamler can come back and get whatever he's got going on under control. Bummer with Tim Patrick. You know me, I liked him, and I was expecting him to finally get back after having been injured previously. And then it just hurts Denver with trying to turn things around with Sean Payton and Russell Wilson and whatnot. But they do still have a lot of other weapons. They got Jerry Jeudy, they got Cortland Sutton. I wouldn't worry too much, but losing depth hurts.
Yeah. So with Cup, he's not expected to miss the season opener with his
Okay,
injury.
well that's good. They need him.
So yeah, exactly. I mean, it's nothing too serious. They're saying. It's just like he's going to be sidelined for a few weeks, and he'll be back by the season opener.
Gotcha, gotcha. All right, well, let me shift it over and talk about contract updates. And so I'll just start off by pointing out Nick Bosa. He is holding out from the 49ers as he waits for a contract extension. Not good for them. You don't want to see a team like the 49ers having a guy like him sitting out when, they're a potential Super Bowl team. Any kind of drama or distractions is not good, but it is what it
Mm-hmm.
is. In Dallas, you got offensive lineman Zach Martin doing the same thing. Jerry Jones has come out publicly and said he's standing his ground on that deal, so we'll see how that one plays out. And then Chris Jones in Kansas City, same thing. He's holding out, wants a better deal. And I know up until this point in the offseason, it's been all about the running backs and, like the squeaky wheel gets the oil kind of thing, even though they didn't really get any oil this time around. But we're starting to see other positions are now involved in that kind of situation as well. And then
Hmm.
some of them have been resolved here, James. So Daniel Hunter from the Minnesota Vikings, he had some contract issues. It was thought that he was on the trade block because of those contract issues, but he has now signed a 1 year, $20 million deal. Looks like he's ready to go back to work, and they're going to move on. Similarly, Buda Baker, the safety for the Arizona Cardinals, he was complaining about his contract, and he got a 2 year, not an extension, but an increase over the next 2 years of his deal. And his had some bonuses and things like that were kind of hard to follow, so I'm not going to get into it right now. Also, same kind of thing. Kevin Byard restructured his deal with the Tennessee Titans, so their safety, they've resolved that issue, which is good for him. Different contract adjustment, more positively viewed, which is, I can't even believe we're going to cover this, but Aaron Rodgers, of all people, has taken a pay cut with the New York Jets. He's now on a 2 year, $75 million deal. It's helped their cap numbers significantly. Sounds like that they've been doing it trying to better posture the team to have people around Rodgers, maybe even signing Dalvin Cook. And Rodgers wanted to show that he's committed to playing beyond this season. Whatever the case may be, hey, it's an abnormal thing for Rodgers, but I think it's a good thing for the Jets,
Hmm.
and it's, I think, a sign that the dude wants to win a Super Bowl, and he's trying to find a way to accommodate stacking that deck as best as possible. So, all right, now I got a whole list of contract extensions, James.
So the
Yeah,
one
go
you
ahead.
the one you missed, and we hit on it a lot, and it's dealing with the running backs a little bit. Was Saquon signed the franchise tag deal and
Oh, yeah,
reported to
yeah. I
camp.
couldn't remember if that was by the last show or if that was after, but yeah, why don't you run us through that? Because that was a little bit of a screwy situation.
Yeah, I haven't had time. It was, I believe it was this. It was like late last week. It was like early last week something, and I haven't had the time to really delve into it. But
Okay.
like
Yeah,
reports are like they
yeah.
gave
So he,
him.
yeah, so he never signed the franchise tag, which was going to pay him like 10.1 million. They ended up reworking, giving him a 1 year contract for 11 million. So he got like
Right,
an
which
extra 900,000. Um, it's just weird because like the deadline passed, I think, on the signing the franchise tag.
yeah, and I didn't understand that. Like they gave him it was 11 millions and 2 million signing bonus, but it was, oh, wait a minute, yeah, because it was like a week after. It was the 25th.
Yep.
And which was the deadline was like the 17th or something like that.
Yeah, and so there must be some workaround where if you don't sign, you can still negotiate a different deal or something. I'm not totally sure
So I just
with the
looked up.
Saquon. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and the loophole that was found is if you franchise tag a player, you can't sign them to a long-term contract after July 17th.
Okay.
So since it was only a 1 year contract, it fit within the rules.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Huh. Yeah, I wonder, does that expand at all where people get a 1 year deal bigger than the franchise tag and teams sort of cave to avoid the guy holding out, you know?
Yeah, well, it hasn't. There's been nothing with the Raiders and Josh Jacobs, so
Yep.
you would think with them doing that with Saquon, then that would be that's the first logical step is Josh Jacobs, and that didn't happen. So
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe there needs to be more time for it to catch on if it's going to catch on, but seems to me like, hey, the franchise tag's there for a reason. So,
hmm
everybody should be playing by those rules that they agreed to.
technically, the Giants are playing by the rules that were agreed to. So
Yeah, after they caved and threw the guy more money than they had to. So,
yeah, exactly.
um, All right. Well, yeah. Let's go through the rest of these extensions. We've got Cole Kmet, the tight end for the Chicago Bears. He signed a 4-year, $50 million extension. I like Cole Kmet. Feel like maybe some of the production's not always been there, but some of that could also be a young quarterback and just a lot of changes with that team in general.
Hmm.
Andrew Thomas, the offensive lineman for the New York Giants, he signed a 5-year, $117.5 million extension. That's a solid deal, man. Titus Howard in Houston, he's one of those bookends we were talking about earlier. He signed a 3-year, $56 million extension. The monster one of them, not the last one on my list, but Justin Herbert signed a 5-year, $262.5 million extension. That one kind of surprised me because for how big of a deal it was, it really didn't seem like it hit the news that hard. It's like it was like announced and just like immediately moved on. You would think like a guy like him signing that, it would have been all over the place for a little while. And it just kind of was like, nope, back to business.
Yeah.
Then we got Trevon Diggs, the cornerback for the Dallas Cowboys. He signed a 5-year, $97 million extension. And linebacker Uchenna Nwasu from the Seattle Seahawks, he signed a 3-year, $59 million extension. And then the last contract thing that I have is now Jonathan Taylor has requested a trade from Indianapolis. Some of that goes to comments like their owner made about the running back situation and whatever else, even though it wasn't directed at Jonathan Taylor.
Oh, oh my God. I have a lot to unpack there.
All right, then you
So
take it.
Taylor and Irsay met on Irsay's bus. And immediately after that conversation, Jonathan Taylor came out and requested a trade. Then John Irsay came out and said, Jonathan Taylor could be out of the league tomorrow and nobody would care.
Oh, I did see something about that. Yeah. But he was like, and I could be
And
dead.
and I could be dead tomorrow and the league will go on. And it's
Yeah.
like, good Lord, why are you opening your mouth? Like, seriously, come on, dude.
Yeah, and I mean,
And
hey, Jonathan Taylor 2 years ago, I would have said, yeah, you're going to pay this guy. Jonathan
mhm.
Taylor last year, I'm thinking, what the heck is going on here? Uh, you know, I know they had quarterback issues, they had offensive line issues, but it made me pause a little bit on breaking the bank for Jonathan Taylor now.
Yeah, it does. So I don't know. I was shocked when I was hearing what Ursay was saying about it. Like, we'll get the other shock I had, but with the whole Sean Payton thing. But Ursay was like, basically, it's just like, here's your shovel, Ursay, keep digging your hole. You're trying to make it so he wants to come back, not so he wants to
Yeah,
leave more.
yeah, it's like you're now pushing him away. Um, maybe that's what he really wants. Maybe he wants to push him away, and he's hoping teams will trade for him. I don't know. You
But
know,
yeah, but you're killing the trade value by saying shit like that.
that's true. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, man. It's tough. It's tough because the running back market, man. It's like those trades can still happen. It just seems like the value is very hazy now, and
Hmm.
well, and then for Indy too, it's like Zach Moss, the backup running back, just broke his arm or something. So it's like this one's all messed up, James. It's all messed up.
Yeah, it's such I don't know. I don't see. Yeah, Ursay's technically right, but with Jonathan Taylor, like, I think honestly, like, he did get a new agent this offseason, and this agent is not an experienced NFL agent, and Jonathan Taylor is incredibly smart. Like, yeah, he went to Wisconsin, but he got into some Ivy Leagues. He was accepted to Ivy League schools.
Oh, I didn't know that, but that's good to know.
So I mean, he's incredibly smart, and I don't see the advantage to coming out and asking for a trade now.
Oh, it's
And
way late in the off season.
yeah,
Well, now
and
preseason.
yeah, so it's kind of one of those things where I think he's getting bad advice, and then Irsay's coming out and saying stupid shit like left and right.
Okay. All right.
But also speaking of running backs, I was reading earlier today that Dalvin Cook is expected to sign with the New York Jets
Yep.
after tonight's game.
Oh, after the game. Okay. Well, yeah, and that's
Yeah.
where I was saying, possible reason why Rodgers reworked that deal.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe helping clear up some space to get a guy like Dalvin Cook or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Okay, so James, in other news, it looks like Sony Michel has retired from the NFL. He was a two-time Super Bowl champion. Um, I guess he was only in the league for 5 years, man. I don't know why. It just seems
Really?
like he's been around a lot longer. So, yeah, former first-round pick, and I don't know, like, did he have a year off somewhere or what? But the article said he only had 5 seasons in the NFL, man. So I don't know. I just report what I read.
Okay, so he did not have a year off.
Okay.
He was drafted in 2018, played 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022.
I guess, yeah.
So that would be 5 years.
Man, it just, his name it just feels like it's been longer. But,
I know.
yeah,
No, he what? Yeah, okay, so yeah, he was drafted 2018, first round, pick number 31. So
crazy, man.
yeah,
Crazy. Time's flying or
yeah,
distorted.
it's just sort of,
Distorted. Yeah.
it's like, and looking at it, like 2022, last year he played in 10 games, and in
Hmm.
2020 he only played in 9 games. So it's
Hmm.
not like, wow.
Yeah. So, hey, nice that he got 2 rings in that 5 year span. Bummer to see him go, but um,
Hmm.
the NFL shelf life is short for a lot of people, man. All right. So, in other news here, James, I saw a Super Bowl thing. CBS Sports and Nickelodeon. Looks like those guys are going to team up and have the first ever Super Bowl alternate telecast. And so, that's part of like the league's initiative to try and bring in younger, newer fans, help kind of cultivate them for the future. And, I've seen some of the stuff on Nickelodeon that they do with the games. And, I'm an adult, so obviously it's like not my cup of tea, but I think, hey, if it's fun for kids and it's cool, it all looks good to me. It all looks legit and innocent and just like, it doesn't look like they're doing anything ridiculous. And so I don't know. I kind of like it.
Yeah, it's really like just like different graphics and like touchdowns. They
Yeah, and the
put
slime
graphics
and yeah.
put graphics over it, and it's nothing to like be like, whoa, what's going on here?
Oh man. All right. So let me stop and say this for a second. And I know I'm going to go on a tangent, but we did burn through the news pretty fast. So, um, have you heard of the show Big City Greens?
It sounds familiar. I
All
haven't
right.
seen it though.
Yeah, because I know your kids are really little still. So in a few years, they might get into it. But my kids love this show. And they started doing a thing with hockey games where they put the Big City Greens characters on top of the hockey players. And like the whole ice rink, everything looks like it's animated. Dude, it is crazy. And my kids freaking loved it, man. And so like if they can do some stuff like that, that'd be cool. But I don't it'd probably be a little tougher in football. A lot more guys on the field, a lot more going on. It's
Hmm.
you got to spread it out a lot more or whatever. But where there's a will, there's a way, and there's cool new stuff every day.
Yeah, that stuff like for hockey that annoys me. Like in the playoffs, like like I think it was, I forget what channel it was, TNT or TBS has NHL games on it now, and they had playoff games, and they seriously, like, like the NHL PlayStation game,
Yeah.
and how, like, when the player has the puck, like it has like a circle around their feet with their name
Yep.
on it. They did that during the game. Like every time the puck was passed and another player got the puck, there was a circle around him with his name, and it's like it was annoying the fuck out of me
Gotcha.
because it's like I don't
You're
need
old
this
school,
shit.
man.
Yeah, get off my lawn.
What,
I don't need this
what do you,
shit.
well, all right. So I know we're still on a tangent here, but what do you think about it when they have the blue line basically trace the puck? Do you like that?
I hate that.
Okay.
I hate that because yeah, if you're a novice and you're not watching the game, you have problems finding the puck. If you're used to watching the game, you can find the puck really easy, and it's just annoying.
Yeah. Oh man, I hope they don't do that in football. It'd be wild.
Yeah.
Um, all right, so back on to football, James. This is the last thing I got for the news, which is just some uniform updates because the alternate uniforms are all the rage. The Eagles have come out with a Kelly green throwback. Nothing really special, in my opinion. Denver came out with an all white snow capped helmet. Same kind of thing, not like super crazy for me. I thought it looked all right though. And then the Jets came out with legacy white throwbacks. And so, out of this recent batch of stuff that came out, nothing like really blew me away. I know we've talked about some of the other ones that, some are cool, some aren't, some, whatever. Everybody's got like a different flavor and opinion on it. But, looks like pretty much every team in the league is going to have one by the time the season starts.
Yeah. The thing that annoyed me about it was the Tennessee Titans. Their throwback is a Houston Oilers jersey. And I think if you leave a city, that would be like Baltimore doing a throwback
Yeah.
to a Cleveland Browns jersey. Once
Yeah.
you leave the city and you leave the name, you shouldn't be allowed to use that color scheme, anything associated with that team.
Yeah, I agree. It's like there's got to be some parameters because at that point you're like offending a fan base by
Mm-hmm.
doing it. And I mean I don't know, like, how much do you care about offending people or whatever? Seems like people are so sensitive today about everything, but I agree with you. It's like you decided to move, so you should no longer have right to, you know, capitalize on what you left behind,
Yeah,
you know.
if you move and you keep the name, and I'm not talking for a season, like the Colts. The Colts moved from Baltimore and they kept the name,
Yep.
so I'm fine with going throwback to like the Baltimore days because they kept the name.
Sure. Yeah, and like the Raiders, I mean, they've moved all over the place, man.
Yeah, but they're keeping the name.
Yep.
But changing the name like they did, like we don't want anything associated with these, with Oilers, which makes sense because Tennessee is not really known for oil. But I'll give the example of the Utah Jazz.
Hmm.
What the fuck does Utah have to do with jazz? Nothing. The reason why they're called the Utah Jazz is because they were the New Orleans Jazz that moved to Utah and kept the name Jazz.
Okay. Huh. I didn't know that.
And Utah has nothing to do with jazz, but they still kept the name. But then you look at Tennessee has nothing to do with oil, and so Oilers didn't make sense to them, so they changed the name. So you should lose everything associated with the old team.
Hmm. Yeah. There needs to be some structure, I think,
Yeah.
you know.
And on my basketball tangent, I like how the Charlotte Hornets moved to New Orleans, kept the name Hornets, and then decided to change their name so the Charlotte Bobcats could become the Charlotte Hornets again.
Well, at least they were nice about it.
Yeah. But anyway,
Yeah.
back to football. There were a couple things in the news that you missed.
Yes, thank you.
Um,
Tell me what's hanging out there.
today, the Tennessee Titans waived offensive lineman Jamarco Jones, who was expected to start the season as their right tackle because of getting in too many fights in practice.
Dude, I covered that.
I did not hear that.
The list was long, and so yeah. But no, I don't mind you. I don't mind you doubling up on it. What else?
I did not hear that. I apologize.
It's all good, man. It's all
It
good.
got lost in the list. Okay, one that I'm. Did you cover Geno Smith?
No, I did not.
So today, the King County Prosecutor's Office, or prosecuting attorney, announced that Geno Smith will not be charged with reckless driving or DUI stemming from an arrest on January 10th, 2022.
I never even heard about
I
this.
never even heard about it either. But the key takeaway is because there's not enough evidence. So for the suspicion of DUI, his blood alcohol level was less than half of the legal limit in Washington. But the thing that I see that sticks out like a sore thumb is he had a blood alcohol level of 0.038 and a THC concentration of 2.6. And I think those together, there's got to be something there.
Yeah, to
But
say that you're impaired.
yeah. But
See, I just don't know how the THC thing works because I know like the testing for that has been really complicated in terms of, you know, is it in your system now or is it in your system from doing it way before where you're not under the influence anymore, but it's just still in your system. And I'm sure all that testing has advanced quite a bit, but as an employer, that's like one of the big issues we've had is that like the marijuana testing, it's almost like you throw it out the window right now because it's like all a huge gray area, which makes it tough. It makes it tough to figure out how do you enforce anything, but
yeah.
that's just where I ask. But no, I think, to your point, if you have multiple substances in combination, that should be something legally that you would think at some point they tie together to say, oh, well, hey, maybe the blood alcohol level's this, unless you're also on something else, and then it changes to this or something. But no, that's it's a good point there, man.
Yeah, but also the reckless driving. So he was pulled over because he was going 96 miles an hour in a 60,
Okay.
and quote driving erratically across several lanes of traffic. So it seems to me like they're just kind of giving him a pass.
That's what it sounds like. Maybe a little hometown favoritism.
Yeah, and it annoys me. It's a bad look, but also talking about Seattle, and I don't know when this happened, but Seattle did re-sign Drew Lock to back up Wilson,
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
but that's not really big news because he's a backup.
I gotcha. Okay. Anything else on the news?
Not that I'm seeing.
Probably.
Probably.
Probably. There was a
Um,
lot these last 2 weeks.
yeah. A little update. The Jets are up 13-7 at about halftime
Okay.
in the Hall of Fame game.
Good to know.
But
Good to
outside
know.
of that, that's about it.
All right. Well, hey, let's switch it over and get to our main event here. Let's do our AFC NFC East Outlook. And so, James, I thought we could kind of do similar to how we've done it in past years. We talk a little bit about what our record predictions are for these teams. We can recap some of like the big moves that they made in the offseason between, free agency and the draft and coach changes, whatever. And then, we can talk about things that maybe stand out with their schedule. or, if they have other things going on like player suspensions or just all the factors that kind of like combine into, what we think 2023 is going to look like for these guys. And, obviously keeping in mind that nobody's got a crystal ball. And if you're the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, well, guess what? You're going to be in the freaking gutter again this year because Zach Wilson's your quarterback again. And so, this is all kind of like based on where they're at today with everything we know now. If that carried forward with the schedule that we think they have and whatever else, this is how we think they're gonna perform. Sound good?
Sounds good to me.
All right, and so we'll go alphabetical in terms of AFC, NFC. So we'll start off with the AFC East, and that'll have us looking at the Buffalo Bills first. And so I'll just give you the quick, key player moves from the offseason. And so at running back, Devin Singletary is out. They brought in Damian Harris, maybe a little bit of an upgrade there. At wide receiver, Cole Beasley, Jamison Crowder, Jake Kumaro, Isaiah McKenzie, they're all out. They brought in Deontay Hardy, Trent Sherfield, Andy Isabella. Kind of like a wash there, in my opinion. I think they should have been more active going after DeAndre Hopkins, but that's a whole separate story. At tight end, I think they got a nice upgrade in the draft by bringing in Dalton Kincaid in the first round. And then on the offensive line, they did lose Roger Saffold, but they drafted Osiris Torrance in the second round. And so I think, if he develops or plays the way we think he could, that could be maybe a wash or even a plus in time. On the defensive line, I like they brought in Leonard Floyd and Poona Ford. Both those guys, I think, are very underrated players, going to help that defense. And then at linebacker, that's probably the biggest concern is that Tremaine Edmonds is out. They drafted Dorian Williams in the third round. Big shoes to fill. I'm not sure he's going to accomplish that feat, at least not this year. But that's okay. The rest of that defense is pretty well stacked. And then at safety, Jaquan Johnson and Dean Marlowe, they're out. They brought in Taylor Rapp. I think Rapp's a bit of an upgrade over those other guys, and so that helps. And then the Bills, just in general, they're almost always stacked in the secondary. And so those are the big moves. When I look at their roster top to bottom, James, they might be the only team in the NFL that I would say does not have an obvious weakness. They have players, and I like using lineups, that. But for anybody out there, lineups, they provide a rating for every player in the NFL. And when you look at Buffalo, they've got somebody either like an 80 plus or kicker could be, maybe I'll go down to 75 or whatever. But they have a quality player at every position, top to bottom. And not only do they have quality players, they've got guys like Josh Allen at quarterback, Stephon Diggs at wide receiver. They got some elite guys at key positions. And so Buffalo may be the best roster on paper in the NFL, if you want to make that argument. So what are you seeing with Buffalo, James?
So, Mike, Buffalo has a really tough schedule.
Okay.
This year, from what I remember. Let me take a. Yeah. So yeah, they don't really start out that tough, but I mean, they got to play. They have to play Kansas City. They have to play Philadelphia. They have to play Cincinnati. They have to play, and it's at Cincinnati, at Philadelphia, at Kansas City.
Yeah, that's tough doing the big games on the road. Yep.
At the Chargers. Their home games from their non-division schedule, I mean, they're the easier teams: the Raiders, Dolphins, Jaguars, Giants, Tampa Bay. So I think that hurts them a little bit in their schedule. I originally had them, and this was, I believe we did our early predictions, our way too early predictions after they got Naheem Hines.
But before he ended up going down for
But
the
before
season,
he went down for the season, and I think Naheem Hines losing Hines actually made the team probably take a step back this year, another step back from last year. Like they took a step back last year, they're taking another step back this year. And they made these moves. Yeah, they have probably the best roster in the league on paper.
Yep. But it looks like they also have the biggest uphill battle potentially.
Exactly. So I originally had them at 12-5.
Yeah, it looks like 12-5. Yep.
12-5. So I'm gonna actually put them. I think they'll still win double-digit games, but I think they're more likely to win 10 games than 12 games. But
Okay.
I'm gonna put them at 11-6.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So you shaved them down one. And for our super early predictions, I was at 13-4. I ended up keeping them in my most revised model at 13-4. But I agree with you. The schedule is going to make it sort of an uphill battle for them. And it was tough because when I went through it, I tried to look back. And last year they also went 13-4, but they had some of those surprise losses last year.
They didn't
And
go 13-4 last year. They went 13-3.
13-3. Oh, because of the the DeMar Hamlin game. Thank you. In fact, I'm going to update my spreadsheet here because you said that. And then that would mean Cincinnati was 12-3. All right, and so but yeah, keeping that in mind, I was trying to find in the schedule, okay, which one of these games are they expected to win, but they're going to randomly lose. And I wasn't really able to pinpoint it as much as I would have liked to, but they're a team that gives you that feeling where it's going to happen. And so even though I got them at 13-4, I like your 11-6. We're somewhere in that range, I think, for this team. They're still going to be very good, but they're going to be one of the more battle-tested teams, it seems like.
Yeah, and I think that like that game, like I can see a couple games where they would be expected to win, and they're going to randomly lose. Like I think like possibly the two that stick out to me. One I predicted originally was I think they're going to lose to Cleveland.
Okay.
And I think they're going to be expected to win that game. I think that. I'm sorry. Line up, line down. My fault. Wait. Hold on. I mean, okay, yeah. So one of the games was that they could lose is Tampa Bay. Everything I'm reading is Baker Mayfield is looking great in that offense.
That's what I'm hearing too, man. It's kind of surprising, but
yeah. And another game that they could potentially lose, like they did. It wasn't last year; it was the year before. They lost the season opener with Pittsburgh at home, and they're at the New York Jets in Aaron Rodgers' debut with the Jets, and I think that's another game where they could be primed for an upset, but they're going to be expected to win.
Okay. Oh man, you got me thinking about Tampa Bay because I got to make a note on them because my model had huge variation for Tampa Bay. I just want to see if I kept my other file. Yeah, we'll come back to that. All right, so Buffalo should be good. They're going to have a tough schedule, and so we'll see how that shakes out for them. But they're one of the top teams. They're expected to play well even in tough situations. And coaching wise, I don't think we talked about the coaching thing, but Leslie Frazier, their defensive coordinator, he's taken the year off, and so Sean McDermott's going to call the defense this year.
Right, but all things said, I like Leslie Frazier. I really do like him. but I think Sean McDermott's a better defensive coach than Leslie Frazier. So I think that's kind of a little bit of an upgrade on the defensive side of the ball because last year their defense was really the issue, and that's why. And 2 years ago, their defense was the reason why they didn't make the Super Bowl. So it might be actually an upgrade with having McDermott call defense.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just laughing because I was looking at my Tampa Bay stuff here. Yeah, and my only concern with it is just, is it going to be a distraction for McDermott? Is he going to be able to manage the team as well while he's calling the defense? I'm sure he will. He's like at a very high level in the coaching ranks. It just, you always got to wonder with that kind of stuff. All right, well, let's look at the Miami Dolphins next, James. And so with the Dolphins, they lost Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. They backfilled him with Mike White. I do have some concerns with that just because of the injury issues with Tua last year. That could expose them. At running back, they're pretty much running it back with Mostert and I forget who else they had down there. They got a whole lot of guys, but they drafted Devin Achane in the third round. They added Braxton Berrios and chosen Robbie Anderson at wide receiver. Not that they needed any help at wide receiver with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. But then at tight end, there's a downgrade there.
Don't they still have Devontae Parker too?
No, he's with the Patriots.
That's right.
That's okay.
Sorry. I forgot about
No, they
that.
did. I think they did sign somebody else, though. I think there was another one on here. I'll have to look it up, or maybe you can look it up. But yeah, they did sign another wide receiver. That's right. All right. So then at tight end, they lost Mike Gesicki, and they brought in Eric Sauerbert, which is obviously a pretty big downgrade. How much were they utilizing Gesicki anyhow? Maybe it isn't a huge factor for that offense because they have so many other weapons. But I like having a tight end. I like having that kind of balance. Offensive line, their moves were pretty much a wash. Defensive line, they lost John Jenkins, didn't really backfill him. At the edge position, they lost Trey Flowers. He was kind of a non-factor for them, but they also lost Melvin Ingram, and that one I think is a bigger thing because even though Ingram was getting long in the tooth, he was still pretty productive. They did bring in Malik Reed, but he's like a 10-point difference on lineups, which is a pretty big jump down. Then at cornerback, that's where things get interesting because Byron Jones was out. They made that blockbuster move for Jalen Ramsey. Now he's hurt. They've signed Eli Apple, who's obviously a big step down from Ramsey, but they do still have Xavier Howard, and so hopefully that helps them overall. And they did draft Cam Smith in the second round. And then at safety, they lost Eric Rowe, but kind of washed it by backfilling him with Deshaun Elliott. And at punter, Thomas Morstead is out. They've backed him with Jake Bailey, also kind of a wash there. When I look at these guys, top to bottom, going through lineups, I think, the obvious weakness for them is at tight end. And then I would like to see them maybe have an upgrade at kicker. They got Jason Sanders down there. I know he's kind of been up and down, but that's kind of reaching. Otherwise, Miami really has a pretty good roster on paper. A lot of it, I think, for them is going to come down to the health of Tua, and then I guess it's more than health because even when he came back last year, he wasn't quite the same like he was early on in the season. And so, which Tua are we going to get? Are we going to get that early version guy that we got last year, or the later version guy? And that could make the world of difference for the Dolphins. Oh, and coaching wise, I don't want to forget they did bring in Vic Fangio, huge boost to the defense. He's got to move him around because they're changing the scheme, but Vic Fangio, obviously one of the best defensive coordinators in recent times in the league. So,
yeah.
What do you see in there, James?
So my thing with Miami is the league again, similar to Buffalo. The league did not do them any favors with the schedule. They're at the Chargers, at Philadelphia, at Kansas City, at Baltimore. So it's the same thing. Like their tough games are all on the road. They
Okay.
have a brutal opening, 9-game stretch where they play at the Chargers, at New England, Denver, at Buffalo, the Giants, Carolina, at Philadelphia, New England again, and at Kansas City. Like, in all honesty, this team could start the season out 0-9.
It'd be pretty wild, but yeah, they've got an uphill battle.
Yeah. And not as not as uphill as one of the next teams the last team we're gonna talk about from the East, but they have a rough opening schedule. They have all their big games on the road, non-division games on the road again. I I had them originally. I took them back, and the reason I took them back one game too is less about them and more about what I see with the Jets.
Okay.
I became more confident in the Jets,
Yeah.
and so I think I originally had I originally had Miami splitting with the Jets, and I really think from what I'm seeing, especially since both games Miami has against the Jets are late in the season, once these teams are meshing, or once the team is meshing. Ugh, if I could talk. Um, and they have more cohesion. I think that they're going to actually lose both games to the Jets, and so I'm going to have them at 9-8. I'm
Okay.
not I'm not going to say that they're going to lose their opening 9 games or they're going to lose their opening 8 games. But I do have them. I have them have them below 500
Okay. And
going into the
so,
bye.
I guess let me well here, no, we'll circle back and we'll talk about where you have them ranked in their division when we get through all four. Let's do it that way. But all right, so yeah, you shaved them down from 10-7 to 9-8. So for me, which by the way, they finished 9-8 last year, just pointing that out. For me, I also had them at 10-7 in our early predictions. My new model is lined up with you perfectly here again. I've got them at 9-8 also. Okay, and so next up, that'll take us to the New England Patriots, James. And I'll just start on the coaching side. So they have decided to bring in a real offensive coordinator by bringing back Bill O'Brien. Um, you know, I expect he'll do a better job than Matt Patricia, but only time will tell. Looking at the player moves, Damian Harris is out. Uh, they didn't really backfill him at running back. They kind of like temporarily brought in James Robinson, but then they cut him. It looks like they're pretty, uh, you know, committed to having Ramondre Stevenson be their workhorse this year, and I think he can be. He's a power runner. They've got a stacked offensive line to do that. It would just be nice to see them add some depth because we know guys get hurt, especially at that position. At wide receiver, Jacoby Myers and Nelson Aguilar are both out. Nelson Aguilar was a big free agent signing for them a few years ago. Didn't pan out. This year they're bringing in Juju Smith-Schuster. I think that that's an upgrade for them, even though I did like Jacoby Myers a lot. At tight end, Jonnu Smith, he is out. He was one of their big signings a few years ago, but he was kind of just lost in the mix behind Hunter Henry. Didn't really have the kind of production they wanted from him. They've backfilled him with Mike Gesicki. I really like that 1-2 combo with Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki. I think that that's really going to do well for New England. On the offensive line, they did lose Marcus Cannon and Isaiah Wynn. They brought in Riley Reef to kind of offset some of that. I'm going to look at it overall as a wash on the offensive line because they're pretty good at keeping it stacked anyhow. Then if you go on the defensive side of the ball, they drafted Christian Gonzalez at cornerback in the first round. They drafted edge Keon White in the second round, which I thought was a steal for them. And then they drafted linebacker Marte Mapu in the third round, and I'm sure I just butchered his name. Um, they lost Devin McCourty. He retired. And then at punter, they had some changes. Jake Bailey, Michael Pallardy, they're out. They brought in Corliss Waitman. But I think defensively, they're improving. Offensively, maybe a little bit of improvement. Coaching wise, that's the big improvement. For them, looking at the list on lineups, quarterback is an issue with Mac Jones. They need him to step up or they got a problem. And then other than that, I think
That's
that they could,
assuming Mac Jones is going to be the starter.
yeah, they do have Bailey Zappi, however you say his name, could, you know, beat that guy up, beat him up for the job. Who knows? But then also, I think they need help at punter. And, you know, Belichick's always been good at finding special teams guys, so I'm not too worried about that. But I like New England's roster, except for quarterback, man.
I do. I like New England's roster. I will give you that. With New England, I had them at 7-10, and they haven't really wowed me this offseason. With since we did our predictions, they haven't like blown me away with they definitely improved here or they definitely improved there. In fact, nothing that's come out of New England has told me that um, they're going to do much better than what I
No.
predicted at 7-10. The thing with it is
And they were 8-9 last year, by the way, just to
yeah,
point that out. So you've got
which
them taking just a small step back,
yeah, a small
which may
step.
be because the Jets are catapulting, and so that,
Exactly,
yeah, okay.
exactly.
Um, yeah, I'm not so sure about New England, and so yeah, my super early, I had them at 10-7, and I think I was maybe getting bought into Bill O'Brien coming back and maybe giving him a big boost there. And I always love Belichick and what he does with the defense, and I think that they'll be just fine on defense. But as I've updated everything in my model as recent as I could, my model's showing them going 8-9, which matches where they were last year, and it's a lot closer to where you have them at 7-10. And I think part of that too is the Aaron Rodgers effect with the Jets. You
Hmm.
got to make an adjustment down for them now, and then it's just also it's uncertainty with Mac Jones. You know, like they're now in a position where we can't just give Bill Belichick the benefit of the doubt. They've got to earn it back because they've gone the wrong way for too long, and so it is
And
what
see,
it is.
and the crazy thing is, I'm reading a lot out there saying that the pressure that Belichick's on the hot seat to make the playoffs this year.
I, I believe it because when you look at sort of like the strife with him and Kraft, it just seems like those guys are always wanting different things for the team.
Hmm.
And maybe Belichick has gotten what he's wanted more times than not because of the rings and the legacy and whatever. But now with Brady gone and all that fading away, I could see Kraft getting pretty antsy saying, "Hey, it's time for a change, man."
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, let's move on here. Our last team in the East here for the AFC, we're going to talk about the New York Jets. And so their big addition, in fact, when I updated my spreadsheet, this wasn't even on here. But their biggest addition was bringing in Aaron Rodgers, okay? And so Joe Flacco and Mike White are gone at quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is in, moves Zach Wilson to a backup role, which is probably where he belongs, at least for a year or two while he tries to develop. I don't know. At running back, they lost James Robinson, but it's kind of a non-issue for them. Brees Hall's going to be coming back. They've got Michael Carter, and it looks like they're probably going to sign Dalvin Cook. I think they'll be just fine at running back. At wide receiver, they did all sorts of stuff there. They traded away Elijah Moore to Cleveland. Braxton Berrios is gone. They brought in Mecole Hardman, Alan Lazard, Erickson, Randall Cobb. I mean, they still have Corey Davis and holy cow, the rookie from last year, Garrett Wilson. I mean, they're looking really good offensively, and they still got Conklin and Uzoma at tight end. I like what they're doing there. On the offensive line, they shook things up pretty good there. George Fant's out, Mike Remmers is out, Duvernay Tardif is out, Connor McGovern's out. They brought in Wes Schweitzer and they drafted Joe Tittman in the second round. I think people are expecting Elijah Vera Tucker to get better. I think they're expecting Becton to get better. In general, people are thinking this offensive line is going to do better this year. The talent's there. It's just whether or not they'll perform that way. And I don't know. With Aaron Rodgers coming in, you got to believe he did some homework on them and made sure that they're going to fit to his standard before he signed with the Jets. So then on defense, James, they lost Sheldon Rankins on the defensive line. They didn't really do a great job backfilling him, but I think that they're expecting some of their younger guys to step up. And they did draft on the edge Will McDonald in the first round. And so I'm sure that factors in and helps to some degree. At linebacker, that's like my big concern for them. Quan Alexander's gone, even though he wasn't like some kind of all-star guy. But it just seems like when you look at the roster, linebacker is the one spot where they could use some help. And so, we'll keep an eye on that. Then at safety, man, I was really digging what they did at safety, but Chuck Clark got injured. It looks like he's out for the year. They did bring in Adrian Amos, which I think helps like mitigate some of that. But yeah, all in all, I like their roster minus the linebacker position. What are you seeing with the Jets, man?
I see with the Jets this season, they could win 5 games. They could win 12 games. Like
it's a big range in your opinion.
Yeah, it's a big range. It depends. Has Father Time really caught up with Aaron Rodgers? Is it going to be Aaron Rodgers of last year, is he going to be closer to Aaron Rodgers of 2 years ago? Is Breece Hall going to come back and be Breece Hall of last year, or is he going to struggle? Are they going to have Dalvin Cook? Is Dalvin Cook going to cook, so to speak? Defensively, they had, if I remember correctly, they improved their defense from last year, but they improved their defense from last year, but last year's defense was the second-ranked defense scoring-wise in the league at 18 points a game.
Yeah, Sauce Gardner was amazing, man.
Which is crazy. But then
their defensive line was like rock solid last year.
Right, but that leads to the question: is Sauce Gardner going to continue to go forward, or is he going to take a step back? It's such a variable range with them.
Sure. I
don't feel comfortable giving them to above 500 because there's so much unknown still with them, and it could change if they sign Dalvin Cook. I could say they're gonna go 9-8 or 10-7, but I'm gonna put them at 7-10 for now.
Sure.
And they're one of the teams that I could see really changing by the start of the season, depending on what happens, depending on how that team's looking like they're gelling, and stuff like that.
Yeah, and so you had them at 5-12 in the super early. You're bumping them up 2, but you're not getting on the Aaron Rodgers hype train, basically.
No, I'm not getting on the Aaron Rodgers hype train. It's more of the bump is because when I sat down and looked at what they did defensively, they improved the defense that was already tops in the league.
Sure.
Which is hard to do. And so I gave them a little bump because of that.
Okay. So for me, I had them at 11-6 in the super early, and my updated model has them going up one spot to 12-5. I do like this team a lot with Aaron Rodgers, even though I'm not a big Aaron Rodgers fan, if that makes sense. And that's just because when I look at them last season, they won frickin' 7 games with Zach Wilson and Joe Flacco and Mike White at quarterback. If they had even like middle of the road quarterback, they would have been a freaking solid playoff team last year, in my opinion. And so I think Rodgers can do that for them. And I don't think his arm has fallen off the cliff yet, even though last year looked horrible in Green Bay. We know he's going to be ultra motivated with the Jets this year, at least this year. And
Mhm.
so, I'll stick with my model for now, and I'll go with the 12-5. And so, adding it all up here, we both have Buffalo at the top of the AFC East. Then it's a little bit cleaner. For me, I've got the Jets, the Dolphins, the Patriots. You've got the Dolphins, and then you've got the Jets and the Patriots tied at the bottom.
Yeah, and I have the Patriots winning the tiebreaker.
Okay.
Because if I let me look real quick. Yeah, because it's division games that gives it. Yeah, it's division games that gives it to the Patriots, I believe, is the
Okay.
tiebreaker. If I remember correctly, I went through the tiebreaker, but then I didn't note it, and I forgot to change
Sure.
the order. So either I forgot to change the order, but I believe it was the Patriots with the division game type, with the division games
I
giving them the
gotcha.
third
Yeah,
spot.
and I didn't do a tiebreaker for some of my non-playoff teams that were at the bottom, but that's okay. We'll worry about that later. All right, so that gets us through the AFC East. Let's move over and let's talk about the NFC East. And the first team we've got up here is the Dallas Cowboys. Um, America's team, if you will. They're always in the frickin' spotlight, and the expectations are always super high for them. Seems like they never meet them, at least not since the 90s. um, and so, just coaching real quick, Kellen Moore is out at offensive coordinator. My opinion, that was foolish. I get it that they didn't like some of what he was doing last year, but very young, innovative offensive mind, and put them in position to be one of the top offenses every year he was in that role. Now they're going to Mike McCarthy calling the plays. We're going to find out, how does that work for him? Does it give him a more balanced offense? Uh, has he updated his playbook to get with the times? Because it's been a little while since he called the offense, and so I'm not so sure how I feel about that. But talent-wise, Dallas, they're fine overall. If you look at their moves in the offseason, the big thing I think would be Ezekiel Elliott departing. They let him go. But you and I, we were already off the Zeke hype train anyhow. Every
Hmm.
year that he's been in the league, his yards per carry has declined. I kind of called it out. It looked like he gained a lot of weight the last couple of years. And then Tony Pollard was way more explosive anyhow. I like them going with Tony Pollard. I would have liked to see them maybe upgrade their running back to a little bit better, just to have a little bit more depth there. But they did bring in Ronald Jones. Maybe he'll help, and who knows? Tony Pollard could stay healthy, and they might not need really to worry about it. At wide receiver, I think they got a really nice upgrade. They brought in Brandon Cooks. He's going to be a rock solid wide receiver too, behind CeeDee Lamb. And Michael Gallup's coming back healthy this year. So I think they're going to be really good at wide receiver. At tight end, Dalton Schultz is out. He's now with Houston. They drafted Luke Schoonmaker from the University of Michigan in round 2. That one, it's going to be interesting because I've read a lot of good stuff about Schoonmaker, but rookie tight ends typically struggle to perform. And even though Schultz was coming off an injury last year and down in his production, still pretty good overall. On the offensive line, I think they're kind of like restabilizing, even though they did lose Jason Peters. He was really just kind of a stopgap and didn't do much for them last year, anyhow. On the defensive line, Carlos Watkins is out. They drafted Mozzie Smith in round 1. At linebacker, Anthony Barr is out. They drafted DeMarvion Overshone in round 3, who they are going crazy about that guy. I think it's a little bit overblown. I don't think you're a big fan of it, but um, we'll see. I mean, I like Quinn in that defense. He's worked wonders for that defense. But probably like one of the big signings on defense is they brought in Stephon Gilmore. Um, Anthony Brown is out at cornerback. Stephon Gilmore, if he's healthy and he plays to his capabilities, he's a huge upgrade to be playing with Trevon Diggs is the other cornerback there. And then I don't even know what the heck they're doing at kicker. Brett Maher, they let him go. I'm sure they signed somebody and I just missed it. But I think looking at the roster top to bottom, they're weak at tight end and they are weak at kicker. Kicker's been something that's nipped them in the past too, so they got to do something there. But what are you seeing with the Cowboys, man?
So I'm going to preface this by I hate the fucking Cowboys. I don't think Dak Prescott is a good quarterback. I also look at their schedule, and the league did them no favors. It was another team the league did absolutely dirty with their schedule. Non-division games on the road. At the 49ers, at the Chargers, at Buffalo. Their non-division games on the road are ridiculous. I actually have them going undefeated at home.
Okay.
And only winning maybe 4. 4 road games.
Okay. And so what does that put you at? 12?
12-5.
12-5.
I hate predicting this for Dallas because I absolutely can't stand them, and I absolutely can't stand Dak Prescott as an NFL quarterback. But that's where I ended up.
Okay. No, I mean, hey, so you were at 11-6 in your super early prediction. You bumped them up 1 game. Nothing crazy. I don't think a lot has really changed with Dallas, and so it's hard to do like a huge revamp.
So with Dallas, the change really with them is when we get to 2 teams from now, there was a change there, and that's where the 1 game with Dallas was, because I did have an undefeated team that I no longer have as an undefeated team.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. A little spiciness coming. Well, yeah. So James in the super early, I had him at 11-6. My updated model has him going to 12-5. And so this is another one of these ones where you and I are lockstep. We're right on with these guys, which is kind of nice. We're not always there. So next up, we've got the New York Giants. And so for the Giants, man, this one, I'll tell you, this is tough because they were a playoff team last year, won a playoff game, and yet when I look at their roster, it is a very weak roster, in my opinion. And so, Dable has coached the freaking crap out of them. I don't know if he can do it again, but we're going to find out. And so looking at the roster moves, they shook things up at wide receiver. Kenny Galladay's out, Richie James, Marcus Johnson, they're out. They brought in Paris Campbell, Jamison Crowder, but more excitingly, in a steal, they got Jalen Hyatt in the 3rd round. And so I think that they're going to be better at wide receiver this year and better in time as Jalen Hyatt develops.
Mm-hmm.
At tight end, this was a really big boost for them. They brought in Darren Waller. They really had like nobody in that cabinet last year. And Waller is going to be a big upgrade there. On the offensive line, John Feliciano, he's out. They drafted John Michael Schmitz in round 2. Maybe that's a wash out of the gate, but it's going to be potentially better for them in the long run. And then on defense, not a lot of like notable moves, low rated guys in the 70s, in, out, whatever the case may be, except at linebacker. Jalen Smith out, Bobby Okereke in. I like that move a lot. And the Giants have needed help at linebacker for a long time. So I think that that's a big move. At cornerback, Fabian Moreau's out. They shook things up pretty good at cornerback. They're trying out Amani Oruwariye, former Detroit Lion. He flashed, but he also fizzled, and so you don't know what you're getting there. But they also signed Bobby McCain. He's not so bad. More importantly, though, they drafted Deonte Banks in the first round. Um, I liked his scouting report. I think some people questioned it, but it looked pretty darn good to me. And then at safety, they did lose a lot of guys at safety. Landon Collins, Tony Jefferson, Julian Love, they're all out. If I look at this team top to bottom, I'm not sold on quarterback. I'm not a big believer in Danny Dimes. I know last year he had a good year, but it was like 700 yards on the ground that I don't think he's going to repeat. Wide receiver, I still think they need help. It would have been nice to see them maybe make a free agent signing that was more notable or make a trade. I do like Jalen Hyatt, but I think he's more of a long-term guy that's going to help get him there. Then at cornerback, I think that a lot of it is going to depend on how quick can Deonte Banks get up to speed, because they really are not lighting the world on fire in that cornerback room. And then once again, we got another special teams deficiency at punter. They're pretty weak there. And so, this is the one where, like I said, James, I could poke the most holes in this team, especially out of the teams we've covered so far. What are you seeing with the Giants, man?
So with the Giants, nothing they've done since their super early predictions has really moved the needle for me on them. I had them at 10-7. I still have them at 10-7. I think I'm maybe high on them because
you're digging Dable quite a bit.
because of Dable, and I could easily see that being flipped as 7-10, but I'm going to leave it at 10-7.
Okay, I gotcha. Well, and yeah, so I was at 7-10 in my super early, and my model still has them at 7-10. They were 9-7-1 last year, and man, it's tough. Like when I look at their schedule, I'm just pulling it up. They have so many games in my model where the games are decided by less than 3 points, and so if Dable's kicking butt like he did last year, bringing them all together, I can see them getting up to the 10 like you're projecting. I can also see them being a huge letdown this year and it going the other way against them. But it's tough. Typically good coaches, they win those tight games. And so with this many tight games, they could be okay. I think a lot of it's going to ride on Daniel Jones, and it worked for him last year. Can they do it again? I don't know. I'm just not sold on it.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I'm not 100% sold on it either. I'm not 100% comfortable with having them at 10-7. But
they were a big surprise last year, and it was a feel good story.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so next up, James, we've got the Super Bowl losers, the Philadelphia Eagles. And Philly, they shook up their roster quite a bit, just like they do every year. And every year they end up impressing us. So let's just hit the main moves here. Gardner Minshew out at backup quarterback, Marcus Mariota in. None of that matters unless Hurts gets hurt, or you know what I'm trying to say there.
Yeah.
At running back, Miles Sanders is out. They brought in Rashad Penny and they traded for DeAndre Swift. I'm just going to say it's a wash because they have a mobile quarterback and neither of their new running backs have really ever proven to be consistently available and good. At wide receiver, not a lot's changed there. They did lose Zach Pascal, but for them, it's all about A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. On the offensive line, Andre Dillard and Isaac Sumalo, those guys are out. Normally, I would say that could be a concern, except that Philly arguably had the deepest offensive line, and they did draft Tyler Steen in the third round. I think they're going to be okay there. On the defensive line, They did lose Javon Hargrave. He signed with the 49ers. That was a pretty big move. They also lost Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, both very good rotational depth guys. They brought in Kentavious Street, kind of helps a little bit, but the big move there is that they drafted Jalen Carter in the first round. They're expecting immediate production out of him. And I'm hearing a lot about the expectation of Jordan Davis from the year before developing and taking on a bigger role this year. On the edge, Robert Quinn is out. They brought in Nolan Smith. They drafted him in the first round. At linebacker, this is going to be interesting because I liked both these guys. They lost TJ Edwards and Kaiser White. They brought in Nicholas Morrow. I think that's a little bit of a concern. They do still have Hassan Reddick, though, but he's going to be more on the edge. And then at cornerback, they added Greedy Williams. He's going to be their third or fourth cornerback, so not like earth-shattering. At safety, they lost Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I really liked him. Super pumped he came to Detroit, but that's a big loss for them. They mitigated it a little bit by bringing in Terrell Edmonds, and they also drafted Sidney Brown in the third round. It's hard to find holes on the Philly roster. I think maybe running back just because both those guys have injury concerns, maybe safety, and then maybe punter because Brett Kern is gone. What are you seeing with Philly, man?
So with Philly, so I had drank all the Kool-Aid on Philly.
Yeah.
And said, hey, they'll go undefeated. So that's not the case anymore. When you get down to it, the league actually did a good job with Philly's schedule because they have the good mix of their hard non-division games at home and away, and it's kind of leans more home for them for their non-division games. They're tough non-division games. So I like what the league did there with that, but I could see them going anywhere between. I really could see them going 17-0. I could see them going 13-4.
Okay.
It depends on how a couple of the teams on their schedule, what happens with a couple of the teams on their schedule. Like, for instance, Tampa Bay. What I'm reading out of Tampa Bay is Baker Mayfield's an improvement over Tom Brady last year. What happens with the Rams? Do the Rams turn it around this year compared to last year? It's just little stuff like that. I'm gonna put them at 14-3.
Okay.
But I really, depending on what happens with a couple of those teams I mentioned, I could see them going 17-0. I mean, this seems, I think, on paper, yeah, Buffalo is the best team in the league, but you took a team that was phenomenal last year, didn't improved here, improved a couple positions, didn't really decline at some key positions there, and you just have another year of experience for Jalen Hurts. So that's why I could see them going 17-0, because I think they actually, with their moves and who they lost versus who they gained, and the projected improvement for Jalen Hurts, I think the team is actually better than they were last year, and they were 14-3 last year, so I couldn't take them down.
Yeah, and that was with Hurts getting hurt last year.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, no, I hear you. I like Philly a lot. The one thing I didn't point out, but they did lose both of their coordinators, their offensive coordinator and their defensive coordinator. One guy went to Arizona, the other went to Indy. I think maybe that hurts them a little bit, not a lot, in my opinion. I had them at 13-4 in my super early. I've got them now at 14-3 in my model, and so you and I have come into alignment here on Philly. And yeah, I think for them a lot of it is health. If Hurts stays healthy,
Hmm.
undefeated is possible, but it's rare, obviously, in the NFL. And so I'd have a hard time pegging it that way. Usually I'd find a way to slip a loss in here somewhere or there. But, either way, I can see them definitely doing what they did last year all over again. So that leaves us with the Washington Commanders, James. And so, you know, new day for the Washington Commanders, new ownership and a new quarterback, and who knows what's going to be going on with these guys. But so, looking through the roster here, Carson Wentz, bye bye. Taylor Heineke, bye bye. They did sign Jacoby Brissett, who I like, but the plan is for him to be backing up Sam Howell, a very unknown commodity at this point. What was he, a fifth round pick, I think? And so that was not this year, but last year. And so they're betting a lot on Sam Howell at quarterback. He does have weapons with McLaurin and, so on there. But um, running back, they lost J.D. McKissick. Probably not a huge issue. I know Rivera liked McKissick, but they got Brian Robinson, they got Gibson. They're going to be fine there. Wide receiver, Cam Sims is out. He was sort of lower on the depth chart. They brought in Byron Pringle, also going to be a little bit lower on the depth chart. Not a whole lot there. On the offensive line, the big move was losing Trey Turner, and I think they tried to mitigate that by they brought in Andrew Wiley, but they also drafted Ricky Stromberg in the third round. And then going a little bit further on here, they lost Cole Holcomb at linebacker. They signed Cody Barton, a little bit of a drop off there. But they're trying to revamp the secondary. Bobby McCain's out at safety. They used their first and their second round picks on cornerbacks, bringing in Emmanuel Forbes and Jartavius Martin. And then they also recently, I believe, signed Michael Badgley, who was released from the Lions. Um, I want to say going back to the draft, you weren't a big fan of Forbes, or maybe not a big fan of them taking him in the first round. And maybe I'm wrong.
I think I wasn't a big fan of them taking him in the first round. I thought it was a big reach.
Okay. So I kind of liked his scouting report, and I think them doubling down on cornerback, it shows that they want to beef that up and get better. And looking at them top to bottom, I think quarterback is the big question mark. I think,
Hmm.
Sam Howell, I don't know. I don't have faith in a guy that I've not seen and just I can't. So I'm worried about that. At tight end, I think they need help. They still got Logan Thomas, but he's had a lot of injuries now these last couple seasons. Uh, Badgley maybe alleviates some concerns at kicker, but I also think that they need help at linebacker. And so, they have some talent in pieces of the roster, like McLaurin. I like Brian Robinson at running back. The defensive line is still pretty stacked, but they also have some holes. And so, what are you seeing with this team, James? What are you thinking?
Well, first, what I see with the team is a team that I really don't know how to predict their games right now. I'm really struggling with that, and a lot of that is Sam Howell. Um, I think Sam Howell can be really good. I think also though he could disappoint. I could see them going anywhere from 2-15 to 9-8
Yep.
because and it's really dependent because they have a decent I would say decently easy schedule.
Okay. Yeah. So you were at 2-15 in your super early. Where are you? Where are you at with them now?
I struggled
Still
with
trying to
this.
figure it out?
I'm still trying to figure it out. I struggled with this. I bumped them up. I finally I struggled with it because I kept going back and forth in that range, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna bump them up one game for the sale of the franchise.
Okay.
and so I put them at 3-14. But I'm not. I'm the least, probably right now the least confident with that record
Yeah.
because, like I said, it could easily be 8-9,
Yeah, and I mean they were 8-1 last
9-8.
year with
Yeah,
Carson Wentz and Taylor Heineke and whoever else they had. I think it was just those two guys at
yeah.
quarterback.
I think it
But
was just. I think they had one more last year. I thought.
okay. Oh, Kyle Allen maybe.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
yeah.
it. Kind of.
Um, yeah, and it's tough. I hope Sam Howell the best. I just don't know what to make of him yet. And so my super early, I had him at 3-14, tweaking the model, maybe doing a little bit of boost on some of these guys, and Brissett coming in, whatever. I got him at 5-12, and I'm with you. It's a very shaky 5-12. I don't have a whole lot of conviction with it. I got to see what they've got at quarterback, and then that can dramatically alter things for them potentially. So,
Exactly.
okay, and so yeah, for me that has it as well. It looks like we got them both ranked the same way. We got Philly at the top, Dallas at 2, the Giants at 3, and Washington at 4 for the NFC East.
Yeah.
And just real quick, so going back here for the AFC East, you have Buffalo in the playoffs. Do you have Miami getting in at 9-8 or no?
No.
Okay. And so then for the NFC East, we've obviously both got Philly getting in, and I'm sure we probably both have Dallas getting in with 12 games, right?
Yes.
Okay. What about the Giants? You got them at 10-7. Did they sneak a wild card?
They did.
They did. Okay, nice. All right, I like that.
Because,
I'm glad you're
but
back in
but
Dable, man, because my model's not digging them.
but I will say for the NFC you only need 9 wins to
Yeah.
make the playoffs. For the AFC you need 10.
Okay. Yeah, I've got the NFC as the clearly weaker conference, which has kind of been the norm of the last however many years now. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, that gets us through our AFC NFC East outlook. You ready to move it on over to the question of the week here, James?
Sure.
All right, so I told you I wanted to talk about Sean Payton and his comments about Nathaniel Hackett. And so, he said something to the effect of it was the worst coaching he's ever seen or whatever with Hackett last year with Denver. He was kind of saying it along the lines of, he's trying to improve the team and do better, and whatever way it came out, I think he's come back and he's tried to backtrack a little bit on the comments and whatever else. Aaron Rodgers has come out to Hackett's defense. Hackett has made comments about Peyton, like violating the coach's code. And so I just want to know your opinion on it, James. Do you think Sean Payton was out of line making those comments? And just like always, I'm going to give you my answer so you have a little more time to think about it. Um, my opinion, and it might sound a little bit strange, but I'm going to say yes. I think he was out of line. And it may seem contradictory coming from me because you've heard me bash Hackett many a times, especially last year while it was happening. Oh my God. But I think there's a key difference is that I'm a fan, and fans, you want them to cheer a team when they do well, and then fans, it's just commonly expected that they're going to boo a team when they do poorly. Sean Payton, on the other hand, he is a coach in the league. And when you're a coach, there's a whole different kind of an expectation. You need to have respect for the game, which includes being respectful of the other coaches. It includes being respectful of all the players, all the refs, all the fans, everybody involved. And so, where a fan can get out of line, I think a coach has to hold that level of professionalism. And he could have chosen his words differently, I think he could still be critical. There's nothing wrong with that, but it should have been constructive and it should have been respectful. And so that's just kind of my quick take on it, man. What do you think?
So first of all, I'm gonna backtrack what I said. I have on the playoffs. I in both conferences, you need basically with one exception, you need 10 wins to make the playoffs. I just
Okay.
um, I made an error in seeing which playoff teams I had. Regards to Sean Payton, if it was it was before he signed or before he agreed to be head coach of the Denver Broncos, I would have said no, he's not out of line. Even if it was right before and then the next 5 minutes later he signs the contract, I would have still said he's not out of line. I think he was way out of line, and I think he compounded it by coming out and backtracking.
Okay.
But the only reason why he came out and backtracked is because of the fact that with those comments, I'm not talking about, I don't care about saying Hackett's a bad coach, but with those comments, he really threw his bosses under the bus.
Gotcha.
And I think his backtrack was his bosses saying, "Hey, you really threw us under the bus. Why don't you go out and fix that?
Clean it
for
up,
us?
man. Yeah.
Clean it up." I will say I loved Hackett's response to it. Whatever he said, yeah, code of ethics, that's not what I'm talking about. He said, I expected this in week 5. Glad we got it out of the way early. Like, who cares? Like, who cares?
Just brushed it off and moved on with life.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Exactly.
he got a job right away. And, not as another head coach, but that's okay because
Right.
there's
But
only
he got
32 of those jobs.
He got a job right away also because the Jets wanted Aaron Rodgers. Let's be honest.
Yes. In Denver probably wanted Aaron Rodgers and they just didn't get him last year. So
I said that when
I
he
know
signed
you
as
did.
coach.
I know
That's
you
the
did.
only reason why he had the head coaching job,
Yeah.
and that's the only reason why he got the job with the Jets.
Yeah, and so it's like to me, it all depends on sort of like the lens you're looking from and like the microphone you're speaking through. And I think that we're in agreement, to a large degree on that, is that, if Sean Payton was still just a TV personality where he's an analyst or whatever, maybe he could say some more harsh kinds of comments
Mm-hmm.
because then he's more in between, you know, like what a fan is and a coach is. He's not really either. He's like somewhere in the middle.
Well, he's an analyst.
Yeah.
He's allowed to give his when he's doing an analyst or he's giving his opinion. He's allowed to give his frank, honest opinion about
no, I know, but but
as
you
an
also have
analyst.
to be
But
careful as an analyst because you want to try to be objective. And the comments weren't objective; they were just, they were subjectively hurtful. But
no, they were objective because that was one. There was only one coaching job that I've seen worse than that in my
yeah, but I
life.
think if you're going to be objective, you've got to point to some facts, and there's a
Exactly.
lot of variables at play as to why the team did that poorly, and so that's all I'm saying is it became more subjective. But
I got you.
but yeah, I think we both agree that yeah he was out of line, and you know. Um, you don't hear the coaches go crazy like this all the time, so it ended up being big news, and that's why I wanted to talk about it.
Exactly. I know it totally makes sense.
All right, well, hey, that gets us through the show, a fairly lengthy one, but I think it was important to cover all the news and important to kick off our outlooks the right way here. For anybody who's watching, we hope you like the show. Please take some time, play Name That Stadium. Hit us up with some questions or comments or, answer our question of the week. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you like the video, hit that thumbs up. And so next week, we're going to carry that torch forward. We're going to be doing our AFC, NFC South outlook. And yeah, like always, James, I had fun, man.
Definite blast. Definite break from this weird week I'm having.
All right. Well, we'll talk more about that later. But
Yeah.
all right, man. Good show. I'll catch you later.
All right.
Gridiron Grinder. Hut hut hike.